With exactly 100 days left until the 2025 APEC Leaders Meeting in South Korea's Gyeongju city, the country is committed to making the global event not only a forum for regional dialogue, but also a strategic platform to heighten South Korea's diplomatic, economic, and cultural presence on the global stage. South Korea's new industry minister Kim Jong-un is en route to the U.S. as Seoul and Washington enter a critical phase of trade negotiations. The president's office confirmed that Korea will carefully study the recent U.S.-Japan trade agreement, potentially using it as a reference framework in these Seoul-Washington talks. The number of babies born in the first 5 months of the year here in the country exceeded 100,000, the sharpest rise in births in a decade. Those who tied their knots in the month of May came to a record high in 6 years. Today, July 23rd, marks exactly 100 days until the 2025 APEC Leaders Meeting gets underway in South Korea's Gyeongju city. How far have the country's preparations come to make it a successful one? Our Song Yujin has our top story.
Tens of thousands of people, delegates, including world leaders, CEOs, and journalists, will gather in the South Korean city of Gyeongju this fall for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, Leaders Meeting. With 100 days to go, new Prime Minister Kim Min-seok, the head of the event's preparation committee, chaired a meeting on Wednesday to review preparations and progress.
Just as the 1988 Seoul Olympics changed Korea's global standing, this year's APEC carries even greater historic weight. It's a chance to re-establish Korea's place in the world after last year's political turmoil. We must aim for an unprecedented APEC that exceeds expectations across diplomacy, venues, accommodations, programming, and service.
Member states will discuss digital innovation and regional connectivity at the two-day leaders meeting from October 31st to November 1st. Eyes are on who will attend in person, especially U.S. President Donald Trump, China's Xi Jinping, and Russia's Vladimir Putin.
From transport and logistics to medical services, all government agencies will work as one so that there are no gaps in the preparation. Specific programs will be finalized by August, infrastructure completed by September, and rehearsals conducted in October so that we're fully ready by October 31st.
And the APEC CEO Summit will bring together world leaders and prominent business figures for meaningful dialogue.
We're focusing on next-generation AI chips, digital transformation, and e-commerce. We plan to host 77 speakers, 17 heads of state, and 60 top-tier figures over 19 hours of programming. It will be the longest CEO summit in APEC history.
Wednesday's meeting was broadcast live, part of the government's effort to ignite public interest.
We encourage you to visit Gyeongju, learn more about our history, and follow our APEC preparations. We'll open new dialogue and feedback channels with the public.
This will be the first summit-level multilateral event held in South Korea under President Lee Jae-myung, which means it could serve as a test of his administration's diplomatic strategy. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
And K-pop star G-Dragon has been appointed as the honorary ambassador for the 2025 Gyeongju APEC Leaders Meeting. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok, the head of the meeting preparation committee, made the announcement on Wednesday via social media, calling G-Dragon an artist that represents South Korea. He added that the singer has consistently shown passion and creativity through his artistic endeavors, such as recently transmitting music into space. So with just 100 days left until South Korea hosts the annual economic meeting of leaders in the Asia-Pacific, Arirang News sat down with the senior organizer to highlight the core focus agendas and how preparations have continued throughout the months. Our Oh Soo-young has this report.
South Korea is marking the revival of K-democracy and setting the tone to inspire regional cooperation to connect, innovate and prosper. amid mounting global complexity. Under the theme of Building a Sustainable Tomorrow, South Korea will host the annual meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum this October in the historic city of Gyeongju. Leaders from 21 member economies will tackle emerging challenges ranging from artificial intelligence and democratic shifts to sustainable and inclusive growth.
As this year's chair, the Republic of Korea has proposed cooperation on AI and addressing demographic changes as a key initiatives among many other global issues. We are working together with member economies to adopt these initiatives as a standalone document alongside the Gyeongju Declaration at the leaders' meeting in late October.
South Korea is a far more prominent player than it was when it last hosted APEC about 20 years ago. And what's the significance, in your opinion, on South Korea chairing this year's summit in 2025?
Over the years, Korea has built trust and meaningful contributions in the international community. Building on that, the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, which is returning to Korea after 20 years, will serve as a great opportunity for us to show that we will restore our K-democracy and that Korea is back on track after the political challenges we faced last year. The emblem and the smile of Sheila not only reflect our warmth and hospitality and openness, but also Korea's commitment in fulfilling our role as a responsible member of the international community.
Korea's chairship comes at a pivotal time, showing the country is back on track in global governance after the martial law declaration last December compromised diplomacy at the highest level. Seoul is also positioning itself as a solutions partner, sharing lessons from its own policy tools and technological transformation to help address common regional concerns.
Through this opportunity, we hope to share the experience we've accumulated and offer innovative solutions to help address the challenges faced by the Asia APEC region.
A key aspect of this year's approach is broader public engagement, particularly with the younger generation.
APEC pursues inclusivity and sustainability, but these cannot be achieved without public participation. We are also working to create platforms where young people can take lead in discussing and sharing their visions for the Asia-Pacific region. As part of this effort, MOFA recently held an open call for youth presenters for the public-private dialogue. We even welcomed 16 young people to join our preparatory office as an intern.
Last May, Korea's inclusive approach led to the launch of a Future Prosperity Fund dedicated to youth entrepreneurship, digital skills training, and policy research. Korea committed $1 million in seed funding. As the countdown to October 31st begins, Korea is stepping up outreach with a series of promotional initiatives, including youth-led video campaigns, exhibitions, cultural festivals, and regional media engagement.
With active participation of the public at the core, we will continue to highlight the unique charms of Korea and the host city of Gyeongju, while also carrying out a variety of promotional activities that showcase the APEC vision, the goals and values of the K-APEC, and the outcomes we hope to achieve. Through these efforts, we aim to create a more welcoming and participatory atmosphere leading up to a successful leaders meeting.
Sure, and of course all this build-up of anticipation is extremely important, especially in creating this kind of conducive atmosphere for cooperation. And while we have great expectations for this K-APEC, as you said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making time for us today, and see you in Gyeongju.
Thank you.
The South Korean government is accelerating efforts to finalize a concrete trade agreement with the U.S. ahead of the looming August 1st tariff deadline. And now, joining Team Korea in the U.S. today was Industry Minister Kim Jong-won, who vowed utmost efforts for a successful trip. Our Park Jun-han reports.
Newly appointed Industry Minister Kim Jong-won departed for America on Wednesday for talks with the U.S. aimed at lowering the 25% reciprocal tariffs that are set to take effect on August 1st. When asked whether he had been notified of Japan's confirmed tariff deal, Kim said he was aware of it. He also told reporters that he is closely reviewing the terms of the U.S.-Japan deal and will spend his two-day U.S. trip primarily focusing on tariff negotiations with Washington.
I plan to meet intensively with the U.S. side over the next 2 days. I am also closely reviewing the progress of negotiations involving the U.S. and Japan. I will do my best to ensure a successful trip.
On Friday, South Korea will hold a 2+2 high-level meeting with the U.S. led by Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul and Trade Minister Yo Han-gu, who left the country earlier. This is believed to be the last round of negotiations South Korea can realistically pursue, as the tariffs deadline is less than 10 days away. South Korea and Japan are both among the top 10 countries contributing to the United States trade deficit. They also share common export commodities, such as automobiles and steel. Given that Japan sealed a trade deal by cutting reciprocal tariffs by 10 percentage points and lowering automobile tariffs to 15%, a trade strategy expert claims that Japan's trade deal could serve as a benchmark for South Korea.
From South Korea's point of view, it's a good thing that Japan concluded the deal first. It gives us a target level to aim for in our own talks. However, I believe a more effective approach for South Korea would be to reduce tariffs on sector-specific items, especially in our key export industries.
Regarding the trade delegation's visit to the U.S., a presidential spokesperson said Seoul is closely reviewing the details of the U.S.-Japan deal. With senior Korean officials currently in Washington, the government is making every effort to secure the most favorable outcome for the country's national interest. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And South Korea's industry minister's trip to the U.S. came just hours after the U.S. announced its new tariff deal sealed with Japan. Our Lee Seung-ja has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that Washington will impose a 15% tariff on goods from Japan. In a social media post, the U.S. leader touted what he called a massive deal that would also see Japan invest $550 billion into the U.S., adding that the U.S. would receive 90% of the profits. Trump also noted that Japan will open trade to cars and trucks, rice, and certain other agricultural products. Trump also announced on Tuesday that the U.S. will charge a 19% tariff on goods from the Philippines. The figure is a percentage point lower than what was announced in April. The announcement was made in a social media post, with Trump saying that Washington had reached a deal with Manila after holding talks with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House. In exchange, the U.S. will see zero tariffs on goods going to the Southeast Asian nation. Meanwhile, the U.S. has agreed to lower the tariff imposed on Indonesia from 32% to 19%. The U.S. will see virtually no tax on all American goods shipped to Indonesia. The U.S. will also be exempt from most regulations on automobiles, agricultural products, and pharmaceuticals exports to the Southeast Asian nation. According to a senior Trump administration official, Indonesia will reduce tariffs to 0% on over 99% of the products from the U.S. and eliminate all non-tariff barriers. With the U.S. and China still trying to strike a trade deal, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced Tuesday that a third round of trade talks with Beijing is scheduled for next week in Sweden. Speaking to Fox Business, Bessent said that he will be in Stockholm from July 28th to 29th with his Chinese counterparts, adding that they'll be working out what is likely an extension. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea and Kazakhstan have agreed to expand the two countries' cooperation on infrastructure and critical minerals based upon their strategic partnership. That was discussed during the first phone call between President Lee Jae-myung and his Kazakh counterpart Kassym-Jomart Tokayev on Wednesday. He also asked for support from Tokayev for Korean companies making inroads into Kazakhstan. On the same day, President Lee also spoke with Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and agreed to advance cooperation on defense, supply chains, and culture. Noting Sweden's role in promoting peace on the Korean Peninsula as a member of the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission, the two leaders agreed to work closely together on related issues. A ruling Democratic Party lawmaker Kang Sun-woo, nominated to serve as South Korea's Minister of Gender Equality and Family, has stepped down following allegations of workplace abuse against her aides. According to President's spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung, the nominee expressed her intention to resign to Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik on Wednesday afternoon, who then reported it to President Lee Jae-myung. In a Facebook post, Kang apologized to the public, President Lee, and her party, saying she will live a life of self-reflection. The president's office says it will swiftly search for a new nominee who meets the public's expectations. In other news, search and rescue efforts continue after deadly torrential summer rains scarred the entire nation last week. And this week, our Moon Hae-ryun tells us more.
At least 23 people have died following the heavy rains that swept across South Korea last week, with the death toll continuing to rise as search and rescue operations press on. 2 more bodies were recovered on Wednesday morning, one in Gapyeong-gun County, Gyeonggi-do Province, and another in Sancheong-gun County, Gyeongsang-nam-do Province, where 13 fatalities have been confirmed. Authorities have identified the body found in Gapyeong as one of the individuals previously reported missing. The other remains unidentified, bringing the current number of missing people still unaccounted for to 6. Search efforts are ongoing in Sancheong, where a fire department official said that while receding water levels have improved conditions slightly, the search remains challenging due to limited equipment access, forcing crews to rely heavily on manual inspections. In Gapyeong, search teams involving more than 700 personnel continue, but have been prolonged due to rapid water currents. Meanwhile, residents in the area are grappling with the aftermath of the torrential rains and landslides that devastated homes, businesses, and farmlands.
The cowshed was completely flooded. We got a warning from the village center telling us to evacuate, but with the cows here, we couldn't leave. It was heartbreaking.
Nearly 2 million livestock died due to the heavy rains since last Wednesday, while nearly 3 hectares of crops were destroyed. Many returned to find their properties unrecognizable. Buildings reduced to rubble, interiors buried under layers of mud, and entire crops destroyed.
The damage is just overwhelming. The water's been cut off, so there's nothing we can do. There's no electricity, no running water.
As the nation continues to reel from the destruction, rescue crews remain in a race against time, working around the clock to locate the missing and support recovery efforts. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, the number of newborns continues to climb here in South Korea. And that's not it. A record number of couples also tied the knot in May. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
South Korea recorded an increase in birth for the 11th consecutive month in May amid a nationwide policy push and delayed marriages during the pandemic leading to births. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of babies born in May rose 3.8% on year to 20,309, marking the fastest growth for that month in 14 years, but the pace of increase has started to narrow. Looking at the year up to May, the total number of babies stands at 106,048, up 6.9% compared to the same period last year. This is the fastest growth rate recorded since 1981, when data started being collected. Statistics Korea is showing cautious optimism amid the country's struggle with a demographic crisis.
The rise in marriages has played a role, along with an increase in the number of women entering their early 30s, a key childbearing age group. There's also been a gradual shift toward a more positive perception of childbirth.
In fact, for 14 straight months, marriages have been going up. May this year had 6.7% more marriages than last year. On the other hand, there are concerns that this is only because of the low point from the COVID era and delayed marriages, especially considering that the rising rate has been getting smaller.
So while the number of births is rising, What's important to note is that this doesn't necessarily signal a rebound in the fertility rate. It's not driven by structural or fundamental changes, and that's reflected in the fact that the year-on-year growth is gradually slowing.
The fertility rate right now stands at 0.75, meaning the population is still shrinking. Some experts do believe the rate will go up with this trend, but a more long-term plan is necessary to bring the rate up to a healthy level, with policies to push marriages and births through financial support having limited impact. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Just steps away from today's bustling Seoul Station stands its century-old predecessor, now reborn as a space for art and memories. A special exhibition there is inviting people to rediscover the space under the theme of paradise. Our Park Hyo-bin takes us there.
Once a place of departures, the station now offers a different kind of arrival. The exhibition, Our Enchanting Paradise, brings together 50 works by 21 Korean artists, featuring sculpture, media art, virtual reality, and installations, all presented inside the century-old former Seoul Station, now reborn as Culture Station Seoul 284.
This grand hall once echoed with the train whistle and footsteps. Now, a century later, it's filled with sounds of art and imagination.
Curators say the idea of paradise wasn't drawn from distant utopias, but from the very emotions this place once held: anticipation, hope, and relief.
The old Seoul Station represents both departures and arrivals. We wanted to show that paradise isn't one fixed idea. It's a journey each of us makes from our own place, in our own way.
In the main hall, once the heart of the station, a large-scale digital work by Hwang Se-jin reimagines a traditional Korean landscape painting, blurring the line between memory and illusion.
I was surprised by how diverse and unexpected the artworks were. The media art in the main hall really left an impression.
Do Jina's evolutionary chimera blinks and responds like a real person. Her AI-powered sculpture with human eyes and voice challenges the boundaries between life and machine, reminding us that in an age where nature and technology blur, we are called to rethink what paradise truly means.
Yeah, we think the exhibition is nice, and we like the mix of old things with new and modern things.
For me, it was the talking face downstairs with the moving eyes. It was like something new and different.
In a station once filled with departures and returns, art now fills in with meaning. In its century of change, it offers not only history, but also a moment of reflection through art. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
After days of bipartisan clashes during confirmation hearings for the Lee Jae-myung administration's first cabinet, the National Assembly shifted its focus this week to bipartisan cooperation, tackling both domestic and international issues. For more on the key legislation and what lies ahead throughout the July extraordinary session, we turn to our political correspondent, Shin Ha-young. Good evening, Ha-young.
Good evening.
So, Ha-young, it's been a tough week for South Korea, with the country trying to recover from heavy downpours. But the rival parties decided to put their political strife on hold to focus on responding to that, torrential downpours, right?
You're right. Well, following the recent heavy rain that caused serious damage nationwide, both parties canceled or postponed their schedules to visit affected areas and assist with recovery efforts. And the government has declared 6 regions as special disaster zones, and both the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party have spoken with one voice, saying more areas may need to be added. Take a listen.
We'll speed up recovery efforts to help people get back to their daily lives. A fast recovery is our top priority. The Democratic Party will work closely with the government to make sure the needed equipment and support reach affected areas on time.
Lawmakers are visiting flood-affected areas, and will do our best as a party to help displaced residents return to their daily lives. We also urge the government to quickly designate other hard-hit areas as special disaster zones.
And also during today's plenary session, unlike the last one, when parties clashed over approving Kim Min-seok's appointment as prime minister, the rival parties came to an agreement and passed a set of non-controversial bills. And among them, two notable ones relate to agriculture and fisheries. And one is an amendment to the Prevention and Countermeasures Against Agricultural and Fishery Disasters Act, aimed at strengthening support so that farmers and fishermen can recover more quickly and return to their daily lives after the disasters. And the other is a revision to the Agricultural and Fishery Disaster Insurance Act, which expands coverage and reduces insurance premiums. And under the current laws, support for affected farmers and fishers is limited to basic relief, and this doesn't fully cover their losses or help stabilize their livelihoods after such disasters. And the amendments come amid increasingly frequent and severe disasters such as floods and heavy rain linked to climate change, and most recently seen in the deadly downpours that swept across the country. And similar revisions were vetoed by the former government, but this time the rival parties agreed that conditions for farmers and fishermen need to improve and had in-depth discussions.
In Ohio, the parties do clash. There's no surprise there, but they also do come together when it matters. And the rival parties are also coming together to support the upcoming South Korea-US trade talks, aren't they?
You're right. So as we saw in other coverage, Trump's reciprocal tariffs on trading partners are a key issue for South Korea. And in line with this, a group of lawmakers from both the ruling and opposition parties is currently in the U.S. to support trade talks between the two countries, aiming to encourage American state governors and local politicians to voice their support at the White House. And according to the Korea-U.S. Parliamentary Union, they met with U.S. Congressman Bruce Westerman on Tuesday and expressed the view that the trade negotiations should be concluded swiftly through a package deal. And they suggested that instead of addressing U.S. demands separately, the two countries should bundle them into one comprehensive agreement, what they called a good deal. And the union said that they also told members of the U.S. Congress that minimizing tariffs on key items like cars and steel is crucial for the South Korean economy. And they also emphasized the need to speed up the trade talks and begin preparing for a Korea-U.S. summit.
Right, Hayoung, my last question is, then can we expect such kind of cooperation at the Assembly throughout the rest of July extraordinary session?
Well, first of all, the extraordinary session concludes on August 4 with continued cooperation expected until that date. And this is because the DP plans to address issues related to people's livelihoods where there is a bipartisan consensus. And recently it suggested 11 bills to the PPP for discussion and is currently awaiting a response. However, it's still hard to say the outlook is optimistic for the entire extraordinary session. And instead, a political standoff between the rival parties is expected. And this is because the DP plans to push for the passage of contentious bills during this period. And these include a revision to the Grain Management Act that would prompt the government to take active measures to stabilize the prices of grain, mainly rice, to help farmers. And a similar amendment was vetoed by the previous government last year. And another plenary session is expected on the last day of the extraordinary session. So these are key developments to watch until then.
Right, but for now, their cooperation is more crucial and necessary than ever. Hayoung, thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
The heat is getting stronger day by day. Heat wave warnings have been issued across the country, except for some inland areas of Gangwon-do, and have been extended in Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongnam-do province, and most of the south. The daytime temperature in Seoul rose to 33 degrees Celsius, Gyeongsan 37 degrees, and the temperature in most regions fell closer to 35 degrees. The temperatures will get higher throughout the week. The daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to 34 degrees tomorrow, and it will rise to 36 degrees on Friday and Saturday. Tomorrow morning, most areas will start off at around 25 degrees. Highs will move up to 35 degrees in Daejeon, 32 degrees in Busan and Jeju. The tropical nights will continue as will not cool down even during the night. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.